We are going to explain a little bit about the different levels of oversoul that can exist. Sometimes this has come up as a question of reincarnation, where a question has been asked about the idea of whether or not people reincarnate, but also whether or not, as has been said in some of your stories and some of your legends, people can reincarnate as different things, such as animals or insects or plants or what have you. Now, as we have said, time in a sense is an illusion, and therefore no one really reincarnates in the classic linear sense, although you can create an experience or an appearance of reincarnation. But this is primarily viewed from your linear perspective, so it just looks like it works out that way, where one life happens after another, after another, after another. But that's not actually mechanically, as we have explained, what's happening, because everything exists at once. Everyone, everything, everywhere, every when, all exists at the same time. Therefore, being that everything does exist at the same time, what you are actually experiencing are cross connections, energetic links to other beings that exist at the same time you do, in the same moment that you do. And by making those links, but coming from a linear perspective, you're interpreting those energetic links along which information is being downloaded to you, experience is being shared with you, and you might be sharing your experiences and information with these other beings at other times in your so-called history, past or future. And you interpret that information sharing as if it's a memory, as if it's something from the past, as if you, as the individual you are, lived before. The soul that you are lived before. Again, this is not the case. All things are happening at once, but you interpret those links in a past, present, future sort of way from your linear physical reality perspective. Now, recently the question was asked that an individual experienced a synchronous event with regard to certain animals and wondered, after members of their family had passed into spirit, linearly speaking, were these animals a reincarnation of those individuals, because it seemed to them that the behavior of the animals somehow reflected the people that had passed on, that they were, in a sense, messages from those people. Now, in a sense, this can be so. But again, it's not that that person came back as an animal, reincarnationally speaking. Again, the oversoul contains all of these things simultaneously. The human souls, the animal souls, the plant souls, insect souls, what have you. All at once, on a larger scale, the larger, higher version of an oversoul. And there are different levels to this, or can be. There can be an oversoul of human souls. There can be an oversoul of animal souls, an oversoul of plant souls, insect souls, even rock consciousness. But the idea is that there can be these oversouls that are differentiated specifically for those groups, but there can be a greater oversoul that encapsulates all those things, the oversouls of the collective of any given world, or even oversouls of collectives of many different worlds, or galaxies, or universes. So on the level of the oversoul, that is something that also can contain the human souls and the animal souls and the insect souls and the plant souls and the rock souls, soul equating to the idea of awareness or consciousness in some way, shape, or form, then the same oversoul extension that might have been a human that was alive with you, linearly speaking, can also send an extension of an animal soul from the same level, from the same collective oversoul, and it will contain a frequency of energy, a signature vibration that will let you feel as if it's coming from the human soul that you knew as a physical being, but it's simply the same oversoul sending another extension from itself as an animal that contains a similar vibration enough to recognize it as coming from the same oversoul. Because it's all about the idea of recognizing the vibration of the theme of the human. Themes can definitely cross into human extensions, animal extensions, plant extensions, what have you, so that you can recognize the commonality of a theme vibration that exists for the human, for the animal, for the plant, and thus you may feel or believe that you're actually seeing the human reincarnated as an animal or a plant, when in fact you're simply seeing another extension of the same collective oversoul that contains the same vibrational theme within it that you would recognize as being connected to the person that you knew. So you have to realize how many levels the oversoul can exist in, how many different ways it can express itself depending upon that level. You can look at some of the higher collective oversouls almost like smaller versions of all that is, because they can contain many, many things. Now, again, this doesn't mean that just because they're extending one thing that all the others are just sort of waiting in the wings. Remember, time is an illusion and everything is happening at once. So all these expressions of an oversoul, all the different versions of the souls that they may represent, are going on at the same time, all living, all expressing themselves in the same moment, without a time factor that you would recognize as linear. So it's not like any of these are idle, waiting to be extended. They're all being extended, they're all being expressed, they're all being experienced, they're all having their own experiences, all in the same moment of existence, because there is only one moment in existence. I know that this can be a little bit challenging for third dimensional and fourth dimensional beings to wrap their minds around, but that's all right. You will, as you ponder this, simply get the hang of it eventually. And it's not that important that you do in terms of your daily lives, but it's important to understand how things work, mechanically speaking, energetically speaking, so that there is no confusion in your definitions about what's happening. So you can understand that something can be created as a reincarnational experience, as if it's the person you knew coming back as an animal or a plant, but simply understand mechanically that that's just an experience that you're being given so that you can recognize the thematic connection between these things, have some familiarity with the messages being delivered to you coming from that oversoul, but that all these things are separate unto themselves. All these things are having their own individuated experiences as humans, as animals, as plants, as insects, as rocks, as whatever. And it's all happening at the same time mechanically. But the idea of whatever it is you're receiving as a linear experience is important for you to recognize the synchronicity therein and the connections therein that are allowing you to recognize messages being delivered to you in some way, shape, or form by the same oversoul that delivered the soul, the individual human soul that you were familiar with, and simply reaching out to you in another way that is symbolically representative of what the human soul may wish to send you, if they wish to do it in that way, or the oversoul wishes to do it in that way. That would be representative synchronistically of a symbol that works for you, that carries the same theme, but is delivered by a different form of messenger that is also important to recognize in your life as a symbol that works for you, with meaning that you've given it, that you've defined it with, synchronistically in your life to propel you forward in exploring what that symbol means to you. So, for example, if a human you knew that is passed on, suddenly a hummingbird shows up, and you somehow recognize through synchronicity that it's thematically connected to the human that you knew, then understand, again, mechanically, it's not actually the reincarnated human, but it's an extension of the same level of oversoul, and coming in a form, the hummingbird, that symbolically represents something to you, the definitions you've given to different objects and things in life, that works in your favor to suss out for yourself what that symbol represents. A lot of times, symbolically, a hummingbird on your planet represents the idea of acceleration, speeding things up energetically, vibrationally. So it may be a message through the oversoul from the human soul with the extension of the hummingbird saying, if you raise your vibration, if you accelerate your vibration, you'll be able to connect to the human soul that you knew in a spiritual way. So you have to look at the context of the symbol being delivered to you from the oversoul and not necessarily just think, oh, it's the human reincarnating as a hummingbird. Again, the experience is valid as a symbol, but it's not necessarily representative of the mechanism that's going on, because the oversoul can extend itself and does extend itself simultaneously in 1,000 different ways. Recognizing how the mechanics works helps you interpret the symbol a little bit more clearly, while not necessarily letting go of the connection that you feel to the human that you knew as a physical being. So ponder that, if you will, and let it sink in, and see what happens in the increase in your ability to perceive synchronicity and extensions of the oversoul in a variety of different ways, while not losing touch with the idea that the human soul may also be involved in sending that message to you, but in a way that works best for you in the symbols you understand.